hard on all of that. Mike Rounds back with us, the South Dakota Senator, Senate Armed Services, key member, Senate Intel Committee, you name it. Senator Rounds is knee-deep in it. Senator, always good to see you. Thanks for joining us again. How are these cabinet appointees going? I mean, you've met with several. Any difficulty, especially for Pete Hegseth at defense? How do you see that going?
I see his path very good right now. I think, he's still going to have to go in front of the committee and in an open session be able to explain if there's anybody going to step forth and make an accusation. But look, I think his focus on what he wants to do with the Department of Defense is the right one. I think he's in step with what President Trump wants to do in terms of any reorganization and so forth. But bringing back the lethal approach within the Department of Defense and getting rid of all the DEI crap. And I think that's the focus that he's going to have. And I think he's going to be well supported by Congress in that regard. But I think the first meeting that I had with him, I really appreciated. I liked the approach that he was taking. And I think the other thing on this that I think people out there have heard a lot about is that he's got these anonymous accusations coming against him. And I think he hasn't had that opportunity to respond in front of the public and to respond to those accusations. And this will be an opportunity for him to do so. My message to him is just get in, put your message together, be prepared for it. Our Democrat colleagues are going to be tough on him. They're going to ask lots of questions. But look, I think he's got the right idea, particularly with regard to the Department of Defense. I thought he had a very, very good message.
So the reason why I asked, your name came up in this Politico report today that say, MAGA world is putting enormous pressure on some Republican senators, including those that tend to be of an independent mind like yourself, sir. That they talk about how they worked on Joni Ernst, the Iowa Republican, who looks like she's now leaning to supporting Pete Hegseth. No one knows for sure, but that you're going to get the same treatment, that Bill Cassidy of Louisiana could get the same treatment if it looks like you might not vote. And it doesn't have to be Hegseth. It could be any one of these other candidates who come up. Do you feel that kind of pressure?
We really don't, not at this stage of the game. We're doing what we're supposed to be doing, which is, as part of this team, part of our job is to prepare these folks for the questions that they're going to get in the public's view. And we want to make sure that they're ready for it. So we ask a lot of questions right now. We provide some advice. And I think that's part of what the Senate is supposed to do. They talk about giving it to the president, but they say advice and consent. It's really advice, but it's advice that we give to the nominees about things that we think that they may need to improve upon, or recommendations about how to answer particular questions that might be difficult in front of a public's view, as they're going to have adversarial members actually ask tough questions. So part of that means sitting down with them, being honest with them, talking about the issues in front of them, and then helping them to work their way through that process. The last thing in the world you want to do is to have a nominee come forward and embarrass the President of the United States. So we want to make sure that they're ready. So we ask good questions, but in doing so, we also tell them, look, we're on the same team. We want the president's nominees to get across the finish line. And sometimes if folks don't read the whole story on it, they may very well think that we're being adversarial. We're not. We're just trying to do our job to provide advice, but at the same time, we're looking forward to providing consent when the time comes. The vast majority of them, they haven't even had a chance to send their nominations through yet. Yeah. So there's a long ways to go, but we want them to be prepared and we want them to be successful.
So you don't feel the overt pressure? I mean, they talk about primarying, senators who do not vote for a pick. I mean, do you feel that heat?
No, look, that's always a part of it. I mean, yeah. we always have primaries. We're used to it. We've done it before. But our message is let's look at the whole picture on this thing here, and whether or not, as Ronald Reagan used to say, if somebody agrees with you 80% of the time, they're your friend, not your adversary.
No, you would definitely think that would be the case. I want to close on something your Texas colleague, Senator John Cornyn, had said, that whatever happens with the big Hegseth nomination, that it's going to be a very unpleasant process for him, I assume he meant. What do you think of that?
Yeah,
Does he mean about the things that could come up in that?
Well, we know that there's been accusations made. Right. Our Democrat colleagues most certainly will try to play upon that. And what we want to do is just to make sure that these nominees, as they come forward, they're prepared. And I talked to both Pete and I talked to his wife, and I just said, look, what you're going to get are 5-minute intervals where Democrat colleagues are going to ask you really hard questions. And they're going to do it based upon allegations that have been made. We want you to be prepared to answer those. But we also want you to know every 5 minutes you're going to have a Republican that's going to provide you with an opportunity to answer any part of the question that a Democrat might not have allowed you to finish an answer on. But then you're going to go right back in and you're going to have on a back and forth between Republicans and Democrats for a period of about 2 hours. But you're going to have 12 different times in which members of the Democrat part of the caucus asking you really hard questions. Be prepared for it. It's what everybody goes through. But you know, if you're prepared and you're consistent, you're going to come out just fine.
And so it should be. All right, Senator, thank you very much. Good seeing you again. We'll have more after this.
Good to see you. You bet.